Here are 3 different quarterbacks that played in 2023. Which one would you take? When I put out a poll, A was the clear winner, with C taking some votes and B looking like a third-party candidate. All 3 of these guys were quarterbacks of the New York Giants last year. A was Tyrod Taylor, C was Tommy DeVito, and B, the unpopular vote, was Daniel Jones, the presumptive starter of the G-Men heading into the 2024 season. There's some context missing here, of course, most notably the fact that New York's offensive line was bad all year, but was particularly awful to start the season. They averaged just a 38.9 grade on Pro Football Focus in the first 5 weeks before getting up to a 54.6 grade in the final 12, which is still bad, but it's not wonder what Justin Pugh is doing bad.
Justin Pugh, straight off the couch.
But Jones suffered a neck injury in week 5 and then tore his ACL when he returned in week 9 and never really got the chance to play behind an improved line. Even with that grain of salt though, it's hard to truly believe in Danny Dimes. Will he ever turn into the franchise guy that New York so desperately wanted him to be following his 2022 outlier season? I have a bit of a theory. A Daniel Jones conspiracy theory. See, I'm not so sure the Giants themselves believe he'll turn it around this year. In the weeks leading up to the draft, there were quotes around the Giants wanting to select a future quarterback, but only if they really loved him. Then, at the draft, it was reported that the New York front office tried to trade up with New England to select quarterback Drake May, but couldn't get a deal done. There was also the weird Drew Lock situation where, after New York acquired him, Seattle GM John Schneider said they basically sold him on the opportunity to compete to be a starter. Yet, throughout it all, the New York decision makers just smiled and kept to their story that they have full confidence in DJ. Nothing to see here. For what it's worth, in that Lock situation, both Drew himself and the team tried to squash the rumors, saying that Jones was the starter of the team. And while that may be true, that he's the starter this year, that doesn't mean they actually see a long-term future with him. I think that Danny Dimes is essentially a walking dead starter this year, a hostage quarterback that they'll throw out there and be pleasantly surprised if he succeeds, but realize it won't be the end of the world if he crashes and burns. And that theory goes beyond just the fact that Jones looked like he had been trapped in the Giants facility for weeks of brainwashing on how to answer the media's questions this offseason. Toss on your Patagonia pullover because we're talking finance for a second. As it stands now, the Giants will have roughly $33 million in cap space next season with 0 in dead money. With how Jones's contract was structured, it becomes much easier to get out of it after this upcoming season. Cutting him would create nearly $20 million in savings while eating $22 million in dead money. A lot can and likely will change from now until then, but that's $50 million plus in cap space to go out and trade for a new quarterback or sign a potential big name free agent next offseason like Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, or even the mayor of Detroit, Jared Goff, if their teams decide to go in another direction. Plus, if the Giants are bad again this year with Jones at the helm, that might just give them all the more ammunition for that trade, or the opportunity to draft another weapon like Malik Neighbors to lure the new guy there to play with them. And I think New York is in a position with head coach Brian Daboll where they trust he's a difference maker and aren't pushing him into desperation mode just to go above 500 and save his job. I think if he were, there would have been a bigger push to get a guy like Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett, or even Russell Wilson to compete with Jones as opposed to just going the Drew Lock route. Not that any of those guys are ones that you'd want to hitch your wagon to for the long term, but they may give you more peace of mind heading into next season after a major step back where your starting dual threat quarterback looked again like a very limited passer and suffered a major leg injury. Instead, I think Daboll has the freedom to take a slightly longer view approach, the one I'm laying out right now. It would be wonderful if DJ actually works out this year, but if he ends up losing a bunch of games, that's fine too. You're then fully ready to move on, you can cut him for less dead money, and head into 2025 with good draft picks and cap space. There is the possibility that everything I'm saying is just fan fiction. That I'm the one with the tinfoil hat, sitting here talking into my computer, and the Giants and Daboll actually love and trust in Daniel Jones. But from the outside looking in, it seems difficult to believe that. While I think there's a lot of truth to owner John Mara's quote that they'd done everything possible to screw Daniel Jones up, at some point the damage is done and the guy just is who he is. When we look at quarterbacks during their first 5 seasons with at least 1,000 pass attempts in the last 10 years, here's where Jones ranks. 30th in quarterback rate, 12th in completion percentage, 34th in touchdown percentage, 11th in interception percentage, 32nd in sack rate, 34th in yards per attempt and yards per completion, and 27th in yards per game. He's essentially one of the worst new quarterbacks in the last 10 years that has gotten as many pass attempts as he has. While his completion percentage may seem like a bright spot, it also requires some context. Over the past few seasons, he's also become one of the most conservative passers in the league, playing more to avoid mistakes than to push the ball downfield, and nowhere is that evidenced more than in his average depth of target, which has dropped every year he's been in the league, before popping up a bit this past season in 6 games, but still remaining under 7 yards. Is it a coincidence that the Giants had the most success when they essentially put training wheels on him? Brett Coleman did a great video on New York's 2022 season, outlining how the team essentially held his hand in the offense while Jones himself ignored deep shots. He argued that the Giants' success was more predicated on the run game than what Jones was doing as a passer. That second part becomes clear even when you just look at the team's overall rankings in pass and run offense, where they were 27th in net yards per pass attempt but 5th in yards per rush attempt. They were a team that pounded the ball with Saquon Barkley, who is 4th in rushing yards, rush attempts, and yards per game, and the team was tied for 8th in average time per offensive drive. Fast forward to this past season, and they dropped to 18th in rushing yards per attempt and 29th in average time per drive. And although they will have a somewhat improved offensive line this upcoming season, they'll be without Barkley and instead have Devin Singletary, who is solid but does not have the same potential high-impact star power as Saquon. And going back to that first part, not taking chances deep, I watched some film from 2023 and it looked like Jones was still doing this, like here against San Francisco in Week 3. The Giants come out in 12 personnel with both of their tight ends loaded to the right side. The 49ers match with their linebackers, opening up space on the opposite side of the field. Jalen Hyatt is the guy we'll focus on here. He's got a linebacker in front of him who looks like he's lined up in zone coverage with his inside leverage relative to him and one deep middle safety. Hyatt's route will take him down past the linebacker and away from the safety towards the pylon. At the snap, the linebacker backpedals as Hyatt passes him, and Fred Warner chases him from behind. There's a decent amount of space towards the left sideline to put this ball and give his guy a chance against a single safety. It's not a risk-free throw by any means, but I think if DJ gets this out on time and away from the one deep man, this has potential for a touchdown. The times he does take a shot, it seems more like a schemed up ball rather than him reading the defense and making a more conscious decision. Like this one against Arizona that comes when Slayton has press coverage and beats his man at the snap. I think of these throws more as athlete throws than quarterback throws since the read is so simple and quick. Both types are definitely important, but you want to find a QB who does both. Of course, I always like to be sure I don't seem like I'm manipulating what I saw, and wanted to show that I did see him let one ball rip to Hyatt against the Cardinals right as he's passing through the second level of the defense into the middle of the field. But instances like these seem to happen less often. And while I know Jones is more than just a passer, it's impossible to ignore that he's been racking up injuries and will be coming off a torn ACL. It's hard to imagine that he'll continue to be as willing of a runner and as fearless of one as he's been in the past. I've always viewed him more as a straight line runner who'd rather run away or bulldoze people than one who has any real shake. Good top line speed, but seemingly low acceleration, and I'm pessimistic that both won't get worse this season. He's just never been a great passer, and now his running baseline may be more diminished than ever. Then again, like Justin Bieber in 2011, I will never say never, especially when it comes to someone proving me wrong. Brian Daboll is a great offensive coach and was obviously the same guy who helped Jones have that 2022 season that got him paid. He's worked with him for a couple years now and may have ideas of how to better unlock him as a passer heading into this year. The offensive line, which gave up 20 more sacks than the second worst unit last season, appears to be a primary concern for New York this spring, where they want to return to some normalcy. They signed Jon Runyan and Jermaine Eluemunor to shore it up. But we've also heard this story before from the Giants, as they're on their 7th offensive line coach since 2016, so we'll see if it works out. It would absolutely give Jones a better shot if this unit is even just mediocre, since there were a decent amount of times last season where he really just didn't have a chance to do anything. Like here against the 49ers, where the pressure gets to Jones quickly and nobody is open downfield. He rolls out of the pocket without much of a plan or option, but credit to him for trying to make a play here at the end. And of course, they now have 6th overall pick Malik Nabers to play receiver. From all reports, it sounds like he could come in and immediately be an explosive option all over the field, including on yak opportunities. I regularly saw Jones throw on target when he went short, with some great ball placement to hit his receivers in stride and keep it away from defenders. I think there's a chance they could develop some really nice chemistry on targets under 10 yards. And lastly, you can't discount the mental element of this being essentially a put up or shut up season for Danny Dimes. I think he and everybody around him knows it. His contract situation makes it pretty impossible to ignore. With any professional athlete, I think there's always a chance they come alive and change the narrative when their backs are against the wall. Alright, so look. I don't have a ton of faith in Daniel Jones to salvage his career with the Giants. He's a limited passer, will likely lose some of his mobility and willingness to run, and, most importantly, it's just hard for me to believe that Jones is the guy we saw in 2022 and not the one we've seen over the other 4 years. Is year 6 really the charm? I'm not betting on him this year, but I also wouldn't have bet on him 2 years ago either. There's always a chance, but if you ask me, this will be Danny Dimes' final year as the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to give it a like if you did enjoy it, and please consider subscribing to the channel so you can catch the next one. Thanks, bye.